Today we're talking with Elke Dettmer, the owner of Points East Guest House in Pouch Cove and one of the pioneers in the development of the East Coast Trail. The East Coast Trail project was started in 1994 by a group of volunteers. It's now over 300 kilometers long and is made up of 26 linked trails that pass through more than 30 communities on the Avalon Peninsula. The trail runs from Topsail Beach north to Cape St. Francis, then turns through St. John's and continues south as far as Cappahayden. It's maintained by the East Coast Trail Association and located primarily on public lands. It was named one of the best adventure destinations by National Geographic in 2012 and is extended and improved yearly. I think one of the things I want to know is, your story is really interesting, and the fact that you came here and saw a need for a trail system is one of the things I think is really intriguing, because it's one of the things people have enjoyed this summer almost more than anything, is being out the trails.
And that's finally locals have discovered it. Like, this is what bothered me for the longest time. No locals had discovered it, really.
Right.
I'll give you the whole story then. Well, I came here to get my PhD in folklore. Mm-hmm. And that was fine, but by that time, by the end, by 92, when I got my PhD, I had moved out here to Pouch Cove, and in 89, and I would wake up in the morning here with the boats going out. Mm-hmm. There was a cod trap right in front, and it was just so wonderful. You wake up with the sound of the motors, and you watch the man looking at the fish at the cod trap, and then suddenly it was over in 92.
Right.
Yeah, and it was such a shock. My own background is from northern Germany, and my family was fishing. And they had my grandparents had a fish business, and we ended up after the war. My father and mother had become refugees. We ended up at my grandmother's place at the Danish border, and my mother was going back to work in the fish business as she had done all her life until she got married. Mm-hmm. And so I grew up with that. In my childhood, I had already seen that happen, and suddenly it happened here. Except here it was such a monopoly, really, Yeah. And this actually made me an activist, I must say. I was living here. I thought, okay, I want to make this my home. I want to participate in, helping to make maybe a future here with a much smaller fishery. Mm-hmm. And I had already gone back to Germany, like my home, of course, was Germany. I left when I was 19, and I went all over the place. I was in Scotland first, and then I spent time in Switzerland, and then I spent time in California. Each of these places were great for hiking. Like, I lived in San Francisco for a long time, and we went backpacking in Yosemite and skiing at Lake Tahoe, and so I was aware of all these possibilities. And living here, even my old neighbor kept saying, hiking, what's that? Nothing, but he was in the woods every day. He would pick berries, he would cut wood, and I knew he really enjoyed being in the woods, but he wouldn't call it hiking. Right. It was productive in some way, Of course, people had no leisure here, so how could you think of hiking?
Right.
It was a hard life here. You had to work hard to survive. And anyway, and we are like the pampered, right? Yeah. You can do that. You have a job and whatever, and a business, and then you take your time off, and that's when you hike, and that's your vacation. A different thing completely. But I was aware of it, and on my first trips back to Germany, I was so delighted with being here, and they had encouraged me at the university to go all around Newfoundland. Mm-hmm. So my first summers here were fantastic. I was going, and they actually specially invited me to go up to the Northern Peninsula.
Oh, okay.
And
St. Anthony?
Because nobody had done much work in terms of folklore up there. So I totally fell in love with Conch, with this whole area around Gosmorn and the Port-au-Port Peninsula, and I spent time in those areas. And took lots of pictures at the time, and went back to Germany. At that time, my father was unfortunately sick with Parkinson's, so I was going back, working on my thesis at the same time, but helping my mother take care of him. And I always had time enough for doing some slide talks, and there were kind of outdoor kind of businesses and associations that liked that. So I was giving slide talks in the nearby, and Kiel, for example, that was a fairly big town, and I think in Hamburg I did it one time, and everybody said, "Oh wow, how would you get to Newfoundland? It's such a great, it looks so beautiful," and I was so enthusiastic, of course, So then I came back here, and I was still in the 80s, and I realized that they had a fairly big tourism department. And I would go in there and say, well, we should really advertise Newfoundland in Germany, because Germans, that's the kind of thing they like.
Yeah.
This is pure nature, and really, in Germany, everything you go hiking, you have 100 people, and here you don't see anybody, and it's just such a great place. So anyway, they were telling me, oh no, we have no interest in the German market. And they did that several times in a row, and I couldn't believe it. So I finally was on my own, and next time in Germany I went to the biggest fairs, like the one in Berlin, it's worldwide the biggest, and I met up with people that were sort of my kind of people, and they were actually Gruppe Neues Reisen. It was a group working against mass tourism and promoting other other possible tours, ecotourism, basically.
Yeah,
that doesn't hurt the country that you go to, but actually benefits it. And the money would stay right in the country. And that stayed with me. I really liked that idea. And I managed to do a couple of first tours with something called Naturfreunde, Friends of Nature.
Oh,
and that's cool. An older association in Germany, and it was usually a working class association. People would go, for example, to Switzerland and stay in the alpine huts, and I had done that when I lived in Switzerland.
Right.
And here, of course, we didn't have any huts, but I brought over at least one group and had included a journalist, a travel writer.
Right.
And that was kind of a success, but it was it was really, what do you call it? Initiation by fire. I had arranged for a bus, like kind of a small van kind of bus, to take us, and had done that 6 months earlier. Mm-hmm. And by the time the travel writer came 2 days earlier, there was no bus.
Right.
I went back to the companies that were, where is this? And they hadn't taken me seriously. I had to got one from Ontario. By the time the people came, we managed to get a bus here, right? Then one of the first places to go to was Cape St. Mary's. Mm-hmm. And I had asked them, do you have a guide so we can hike from Cape St. Mary's to Port Lands, which is a tricky hike.
It is.
Tricky. It's close to the rocks always. Okay. We got down there, it was completely foggy. Oh. So 3 days in a row fog, or 2 days in a row fog. And then I asked, well, where's the guide? He just broke his leg. I knew they didn't have a guide. They just didn't tell me. Nobody had told me no. They all said yes.
Of course,
So I was I had nightmares by that time. So the next stop was North Harbor, and I had asked to have a boat to take us to King's Cove, I think. Mm-hmm. So pretty far out in Placentia Bay. And wonderful guy, Dave Sleet, I think was his name. Anyway, too foggy still. Couldn't go anywhere.
Jeez.
And we were supposed to stay in this cabin, and then it turned out to be a really, really good experience. So anyway, it was difficult in the beginning, but by the time we hit Grossmont, it was sunny and everybody was happy.
That's right. Well,
and it ended up a good trip.
When did you start Points East?
That was kind of the beginning.
Yeah.
I had a big enough house, I didn't know what to do with it.
Yes.
And I thought of it, maybe it should be a hostel, but nobody was trying to get hostels coming here. And then I had another contact in Berlin, and it was called Frauen unterwegs, women traveling together.
Oh.
Okay, but that was already after we had started the East Coast Trail.
Right.
We started that in 94.
We'll be right back with Elke Dettmer right after this break. So I've read that there was about 80 volunteers total that got about 25 kilometers going, and then, is that accurate?
It's sort of almost the right story. One of my old friends I lived in St. John's for 7 years, and one of my old friends was Peter Gard. Mm-hmm. And we ran into each other, and that was after I had started working for the Economic Recovery Commission. I worked on an adventure tourism strategy there. And I also worked, later on as a volunteer. I was involved in economic recovery in this area.
Right.
And we couldn't get anybody to come up with any new ideas. But I had a little group here in Pouch Cove, Flat Rock, and Boleyn. We were getting together and starting a little newspaper, trying to influence people, like, what else can we do now? Just getting a bit more courage and all. And nobody came up with ideas. Then I ran into Peter God. And his dream was to create an East Coast Trail, like along the coast here. And it just clicked, just really clicked. So I invited him to give us a talk, our little group here. And we had eventually about 20 people going to a slide talk that he gave about different trails that he had to hike.
Yes.
All over the place. And the next weekend we started. It was people I knew mostly, and Peter God, and then his own friends, and then more and more came together. And we would go on weekends at the time, and bushwhack, and we had a lot of fun. It was quite a bit of socializing. For 3 years, it was a fun thing to do. And I think we were creating some stuff already, And then it became, of course, the government started giving us money, which is not that they gave it to us. We had to apply and all,
right.
And I'm not good at that at all. I cannot really deal with bureaucrats, but with this visionary kind of thing, I'm okay,
Yeah.
So I'm very proud of what we did. And of course we started up here, but there was no money up here for a while, because all the support money went to south of St. John's, because that was rural.
Right.
We were classified as urban along
Right.
with St. John's.
Right.
So our money came much later to create a professional trail here, but we still had all sorts of, we still hiked here, and I started, I represented the East Coast Trail in Germany on a little ecotourism fair, which is again part of my earlier contacts
Yes.
that I had in Berlin with the Gruppe Neues Reisen, and it was really fun, and I'm still, some of the contacts I still work with now.
Right.
And they sent us people from Germany. And the Germans are usually the most excited and love this here,
Well, there's a reason. It's gorgeous. We're on the cliff overlooking the ocean right now. You've got your gardens. Your trail is right down there.
Of course, for me, this is so normal now. Does anybody live any differently? This is how everybody should live.
I know. Well, I guess you had a choice to come here as well, and you said you had a choice between living in the U.S. and living in Newfoundland. That had to be one of the reasons.
Yeah, and one of the reasons is also that it was part of my heritage.
Right.
I grew up with the idea that my family had been fishing, and my mother came here, and she said, "This is like my childhood," because there was still fish here the first time she came.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. That's great.
So I was, pretty close to, this is what I really wanted, I guess, And it's in the middle, in between California and Germany. I always thought I'm not quite Californian, I'm not quite German, I'm in the middle, right in the middle.
That's great. Well, you've, being one of the founders of the East Coast Trail, one of the things I think people have realized this summer is the trail system. Mm-hmm. So I've been on hikes that you probably helped create. If undoubtedly, like down in Flat Rock, for example, and what do you think is sort of occurring locally when it comes to their awareness?
It's getting better. Well, my hope in the beginning was that the communities would buy in immediately, and they didn't. Because it was such a strange concept. Now, who wants to come here? First of all, there was also this almost inferiority complex. What do we have here? Even the tourism department had that. Who wants to come here and look at that? Where are the amusement parks? We need a Disneyland here or something.
Right.
They didn't quite realize that this is exactly what people wanted. So I was trying forever and ever to promote that. Say let's keep it small. Let's use the local cabins. Let's use the local people. And the very first night I spent in Newfoundland, I was a very small hospitality home in Pouch Cove, and nicest people you can imagine, and a really great experience. They had to close down the next year because it wasn't fine enough. They didn't have the right shower. That all this kind of stuff. That is really. It seemed important because I think they were really geared towards Americans to come here.
Right.
But if you're from Germany, I've had people that obviously had money come here and they just really can handle pretty simple stuff.
There has been a nice shift where people are looking for more authentic.
Yes,
as opposed to some fancy designer faucet, like you said, or in a bathroom. Do you think it's during the pandemic, people were looking for stress relief, and on the health side of things, personally, I don't find it surprising that people would migrate outside and start to explore the trails for the first time. Do you think that there is something when it comes to like the stress relief aspect of it and being by the ocean?
Oh yeah, for sure. And and we are so lucky here too. I mean, being cooped into a small apartment in a big city would be horrible, but here we can go outside.
Yeah.
I mean, we have lots of space. Having space is such a luxury,
I know.
I mean, I've lived in San Francisco, which is wonderful, but there is no space in a sense, not like here.
You have to drive an hour at least
you
to
have
get
to get out,
somewhere.
Go to Yosemite, 5 hours to drive, Tahoe maybe 4 hours, Here you are right there,
And somebody owns all the land, so you can't even walk half the time because somebody owns it. And here you can walk for
pretty free,
is it 336 kilometers of
That's
East
what
Coast
they
Trail
say
now?
Yeah.
Wow.
We were aiming for more, but I think there's plenty actually.
But
But going around the corner, around Cape St. Francis and on the other side, I was surprised we were doing that, but fine.
Yeah.
And the government is now supporting it, which
Right.
is fine. Now, the one thing that I am hoping for is that we will be protected for the future.
Well, that's the thing. Okay, I was going to ask you about that because the trail isn't owned by anybody. It is protected by volunteers, right?
We are trying to. And, of course, what we were finding in the beginning, we were trying to find the old trails and maybe get them a little bit closer to the views.
Right.
Because the views were not important to people at the time,
Right.
But to use what there was already and maybe just improve it or change a little bit. And I think there should be a right that these old trails are, kept up and for the future. But, we had to deal with town councils and private properties. And, there are a lot of communities. Mm-hmm. Some of them are kind of like dead communities now. But still, there are a lot of communities with people in them. And people have discovered that the view is actually valuable. You get more money for a piece of land with a view. Mm-hmm. We started the trail at the right time, and it was quite depressed in '94. People were leaving.
Yes.
They were not coming in. But then the oil boom changed a lot.
It did, yeah. Yeah. So
because suddenly there was more money, and Alberta, people came back with money and immediately wanted to put a house up. And
they had more time for recreation.
Yeah.
The other thing is there's infrastructure changes. Like, for example, there was apparently a 3-ton rock in the way at the spout that they removed.
That was a great,
right,
that was a great thing. Yeah.
What happened there? Because the spout is the hike for a lot of people on the East Coast Trail. It's not the only one, but it's definitely one of the most prestigious.
It gets advertised a lot. There was the spout was a landmark for fishermen for a long time, and then a rock came in and it didn't come back. We had actually I remember Nigel. Don't remember his last name now, was an engineer for the Hibernia. Mm-hmm. He came from Scotland. And he really loved to hike. And I actually hiked with him on this mountain hike one time. And he helped us rig up something to get that rock out.
Oh, that's cool.
That was a really good thing we did. And then people said, this spout is happening again.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course, by then the fishing was no longer there. But it was a landmark that the fishermen used to, this is how you get back to the harbor. Yeah,
that's interesting. I didn't think about it that way.
No, it was an old landmark actually, that had disappeared, and we recreated it. The other thing we recreated was that hanging bridge in La Manche.
Right. Yeah.
And when we opened that, I was actually organizing the opening. The people who had lived in La Manche had to move away when their old bridge had been destroyed by a storm, and they lived somewhere else then, and we found a few of them. Mm-hmm. And when we had our opening celebration, that was early June, because we always have the fundraiser now, early June, the International Day of the Hike or whatever it is. They had a few stands with old pictures, and they were the first ones to walk over.
Oh, nice.
So it was really nice. And some of their descendants were like young people who played music. They were playing music all over, so I was really happy to see that.
It's amazing that it goes all the way down to Cappahayden now. That's a long ways away. That's quite the drive. I think sometimes people I've seen a lot of people on the trail. I hike a lot myself, and I've seen a lot of people. I think it's one of their first summers hiking. Mm-hmm. Just for people that are thinking about taking it up, is there anything they should know? Like, should they be intimidated by it? Is there ways to start off easy and then get into it a little bit more advanced?
Well, what I do with my hikers when they come here, like I said, they come from all over the world, but mostly from Canada, like mostly from Toronto, Calgary, Vancouver, sometimes from Nova Scotia, but I really give them a test usually. My test hike is from here to Cape St. Francis. It's called moderate. Mm-hmm. It's not too easy. It's not too difficult. Mm-hmm. And you can come back on the dirt road.
Right.
So far, everybody has managed to get to Cape St. Francis and come back on the dirt road. Some people, it was not enough. They wanted to do more. And now that we have, another option, you can go on to Pouch Cove. Like it's really nice. It has options. Mm-hmm. And others were saying, "Oh no, this is a bit much." So I know the next few days, some people, are like a 4-hour hike is good for a day.
Yeah.
And others want to do more. I think one guy from New Zealand, a really tall guy. I mean, I had to double all the distances because he was such a good hiker and fast. So, I'm playing it by ear, but with my own guests, I'm careful the first days because I don't know how good they are or how fit.
Yes.
And now this is not the cheapest program, our hiking program, which I ran with a few partners. You can hike the whole trail in about 12 days, 3 or 4 days at my place, and 3 or 4 days in the middle, and 3 or 4 days in the end. Yeah. And we make sure that they can hike all the major hikes. We usually attract people that are over 50, have more money, more time, and don't want to camp out.
Right.
Which is my kind, because I used to backpack, but I'm no longer doing that. So, so these people, I want to be sure that they are fit enough. Mm-hmm. And it's absolutely wonderful sometimes what you see,
It allows them to keep their gear at a centralized location instead of taking a backpack the whole way. Yeah,
they do a day pack. I mean, we kind of drop them off where they start the hike, and then they call and we pick them up.
Yeah. And so when somebody goes out for a hike, if they're going to go and try and venture out on their own, what should they be bringing for supplies just in case?
I'm probably the wrong person to ask, but I mean, the basics, of course, take some water. And here, from now on, I also kind of, if people hike Cape St. Francis and then the other side, take lots of water because there's even no water up at Cape St. Francis. Right. So you do that, of course, and you have your basic layers. If it's a nice hot day, I mean, you can layer up later because you can never know, the weather changes so fast here.
Yeah.
Really, you have to carry all that. Yeah. But most people have a cell phone these days.
Yeah.
And then now you can almost always get the cell phone going.
Yeah.
In the beginning, it wasn't so easy.
Mm-hmm. It's definitely evolved, and it's a thing now. I mean, you can go get your professionally printed East Coast trail maps. You can look at your hike beforehand, the elevations and where the rest
maps were actually really good. Yeah. So the first set of maps was pretty amazing. Yeah.
Oh, it's a nice little challenge to try things you haven't done before, and you can have a really good idea of what you're getting into before you start.
Yeah, it makes you feel safer. Yeah. But I'm still pretty careful with, when I don't know the people how fit they are, then I'm trying to be careful about what to advise.
Are the trails open all year round? Could people access them?
As far as I know, we still have, I mean, it's obviously the weather dependent a bit, but we were hiking through the winters at times here, early on. I don't recommend hiking when it's icy. I remember hiking up to Cape St. Francis one time with a bunch of people, and really icy, and one woman slipped and really hit herself. And it's close to the cliffs often,
Yeah, right.
You do not want to jeopardize
and rocky,
that.
icy rocks,
yeah. So ice that's where I, do not recommend it.
Yeah, snowshoes on a more flat trail maybe.
Yeah,
something like that. Yeah. What are your favorite hikes?
Oh, the one between Flat Rock and here is very, very nice. Has lots of good features. I'm partial to this. I used to be custodian up here, so Pouch Cove was my favorite. I was on the first hike when we rediscovered Pouch Cove.
I've never been to that.
Wonderful.
Yeah,
absolutely wonderful.
And that's just north of here.
Yeah, and it's over on the other side, so you see the Conception Bay side.
Oh, okay.
And I was so excited about it. I took a bunch of my women friends there, and we backpacked into it and had a wonderful time there.
How long is that one?
Well, you can go off. It's now part of the real East Coast Trail, but at one time it was kind of a side trip, But now it's integrated. When you come from Pouch Cove up to Cape St. Francis, it's part of that.
Oh, nice. Okay.
And but there are access roads that you can get, like a fairly steep access road.
Right.
Yeah, that was fun. I really remember that very fondly.
Yeah. You said it before. A lot of people choose to be in accommodations, or some people camp. Can you camp along the way? And are there different guest houses? Like obviously you've got guest houses.
Yeah, I was trying to. Obviously, there's lots of B&Bs now, which are and cabins. Now our program includes especially since people come from far away sometimes, we do everything.
Mm-hmm.
Pick them up from the airport, drop them off at the airport at the end if they want to. They get 3 meals a day.
Mm.
So it's really a full day,
Right.
in the morning, let's say I have breakfast with them at 8 o'clock.
Mm-hmm.
Then we decide where do you want to hike today. And it's like we as hosts really recommend, like, this is a rainy day. Why don't you hike from Flat Rock to Torvey, for example?
Right.
That's a good day for, it's not a huge hike. It's easy.
Yeah.
It's nice, but it's, on a rainy day, that's still okay,
Yeah.
But wait for, like, Flat Rock to here, wait for a really nice sunny day if possible,
Yes. Yeah.
So I try to pick the best day for that longer hike.
Yeah.
And, So in the morning you decide. Then I drive them, let's see, at 9 o'clock they're ready to go.
Yeah.
And if they do Cape St. Francis, they can hike from here. But if they go, for, Torvey, whatever, Torvey to Flat Rock, I drop them off. And then I show them where we can meet again
Mm-hmm.
at the end.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually have a sort of a system, there's friends of mine in Flat Rock where they could sit in the garden and call
nice.
me, and often enough they don't want to come with me when I go there because they're such nice people, and they maybe open a bottle of wine or something, and they're talking,
Sounds rough.
So they get to know a few local people that way too,
Good.
Yeah.
Good. I like that. That's part of the charm, I think, is that you get a chance to have Newfoundland hospitality, which is great.
Yes, of course. And each one of us is very different. My partners are so different,
Yeah. Well, that's another thing about Newfoundland is the wildlife. What are some of the things people see? I guess it depends on the time of year.
Yes, of course. You missed our last week was full of whales here. There were whales all the time. And I used to have like some special things happening, not just with my own guests, but a group came regularly from Switzerland. And probably like a small group, 8 to 10 people usually. And the leader would ask me, can you arrange something? And I really used to love that. Usually I had John Lee and one of his students here, the whale experts, and they would bring whale bones and like an outline of a whale, and we put it all out here.
Wow.
And I would kind of make coffee, tea, and some cake.
Yeah.
And we would have an afternoon thing where we were looking out on the water, getting to talk about the Whale Research Institute, like what kind of measures they take to keep the whales from the nets at the time, and it was really great. I mean, that was a good experience usually,
Yeah.
And I love to do these special events. So once in a while, I had the Sierra Club here a few times. I was part of member of the Sierra Club in California.
Okay.
And one of my old friends used to bring the Sierra Club here, usually twice. One group would come to help with the trail, trail maintenance and trail whatever, for 1 week, and the next group would just come for hiking.
Right.
So, and they would always spend one afternoon here.
Right.
And again, I would make, we had picnic tables out here, we would make coffee and cakes, and then usually discuss the East Coast Trail, what we were having in mind, and I would invite people to come and talk to us, like Randy Murphy or, whoever was in charge,
Sierra Club is like outdoor enthusiast type club for those people there.
Have you heard of the Sierra Club?
I have heard of it, but I probably
in Canada it's not so important, but it was the first one of those clubs that was formed in Yosemite by John Muir, and it has had a very good reputation for kind of outdoors club, and also for trying to keep the nature intact, preventing damage, and they have service trips all over the world. So this became one of the service trips here.
Right.
That's the East Coast Trail.
So what's the vision for here? Because I think about places like the El Camino or the Inca Trail, and some of these places are just destinations for all over the world, but I feel like the East Coast Trail is comparable in a lot of ways to some of these other hikes.
I mean, I've had people here that have hiked all over the world and said, this is one of the best.
Let's talk about you and your sort of philosophy towards it. Like, you're obviously very healthy, and you're very active. Is that why you got into it, for a form of exercise, or was it because you found it stress relief, or just enjoyed, or what is it?
No, it's kind of funny. It's my own life, really. I grew up in a flat area, and I was reading a lot as a kid. I wasn't really an outdoors person at all. And then I ended up in Scotland at age 19, and I was working in a castle that had been picked up by a holiday association. And that was my first experience, and I think it stuck with me. This association picked up about 40 manors and castles that were falling down, basically, and fixed them up to some degree. And members could spend their vacations there. And this little castle in Scotland, it's just absolutely gorgeous. I thought it was great. Anyway, maybe 60 people would come for 1 week or 2 week trips. And they would have a bus in the morning. No, we were working hard. I was there. There were other students too. We were like, serving breakfast and washing the dishes by hand and making up beds and whatever. It was hard. But on our days off, we could join them.
Yes.
And so if you take the bus, you went to one really nice area in Scotland, maybe a few hours of driving. And there usually was an A, B, and C hike, an easy, medium, and difficult. And you would meet again at the bus towards the evening. Okay? And that was a really good... it's still going, apparently. It's called CHA, Holiday Association of some sort. And so I was there for 6 months. And I discovered that I like to be outdoors and I like to hike, and I had never done that really, And the next thing that was when I did my English, and then I wanted to do French. I ended up in Switzerland, and I stayed on for more than I wanted to in the beginning, but it was just wonderful.
Yeah,
I was just in the mountains a lot, And what I remember of Switzerland is the mountains. And then when in California, I lived for so long in California, but what I remember most is my backpacking trips.
Right.
I mean, they were just so important to me,
Yeah. There's some beautiful country there. I went to Scotland. I bagged in Monroe the first time, and there's a big hiking culture up there.
Oh, yeah.
I was up to Loch Nagar and did a full day hike up through there and went up to the snowcap. But that's a huge thing. And then California, if you were north of San Francisco, Pacifica region and all that area, Lindemar and places like that.
I had a bunch of friends at the time, and we would just pick a goal. Okay, let's go up there, and let's go. But mostly it was Yosemite and the area around Lake Tahoe.
Right.
And sometimes you would just rent a cabin somewhere at Lake Tahoe and spend a few days,
Right.
And did cross-country skiing. I didn't do any downhill there,
Right.
But cross-country was beautiful.
And we've got some amazing cross-country here, too.
Yes, I mean,
the
you can
trails
do
are
it
all
here.
being groomed.
Yeah, absolutely, So, I mean, all this fit in, and just what I liked, and I discovered that, after I left Germany, basically,
There's probably a lot of people that are discovering that for themselves this summer.
Yes, and I think it's a great thing. Like, what better vacation is there than being outside?
It's just such a part of our culture here. It's unbelievable. And I think that's one of the things, too, if we get to the health side of things, the stress relief of it all. I don't think that there's been some research that shows that being out in nature is so random that you forget where you are, you're paying attention to everything because everything is different, as opposed to being on a track somewhere that's the same.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that there's some big health benefits when it comes to stress relief for people.
Yeah,
you find that with people?
Yeah, I think so, for sure. And, just look out at the ocean here. I mean, every day is different,
Yeah.
And you don't feel hooked in at all because it's open. You look at that. I've had people here, like, I was thinking of this as a possible healing center as well, because I remember when I first thought about that, it was a nurse coming from Berlin, right? And she was completely stressed out. And about 2 weeks later, she looked 10 years younger, totally relaxed, happy, I thought, oh, okay, this is, and because I'm so used to it, I don't see it for myself now, but I've had people here who spent maybe a month even in that little building there.
Yes.
And just were happy like anything,
Oh, it's the best view
coming
ever.
from any city in Germany, Now, Germany is just because I grew up there. I still have old friends there, right?
Yeah.
So that is a bit my own sample, but from anywhere else, from big cities, it would be such a relief,
Well, we can literally go 5 minutes and be at the ocean, and you can see it from almost anywhere on the Avalon. So
yeah, of course. I mean, Newfoundland was really peopled around the oceans, and there was nothing as at the time. When they first came, that was it. Yeah.
And those hiking trails connected communities. They were
yes,
walking highways.
Yeah, but the one between Pouch Cove and Flat Rock definitely existed, but we did improve it a bit and put a bridge in where you had to jump over this waterfall. I mean, it was a bit too scary for me, There's this big waterfall and you had to kind of try to catch the right rocks, It's good to have the bridges that we put in, I think, were quite a nice job.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I know you go for a hike now and you see, somebody put a new stair thing in here, or there's a couple new beams here on this little bridge, and that makes it kind of fun too when you see people that are, you're like, how are they fixing this up, and how did they move rocks, and how did they get logs out here? It's an amazing.
It's an amazing job. Yeah.
It is, and it's all volunteer, right?
No. It's also we have a paid team, so we have to have fundraisers all the time.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just another fundraiser on the go now, which is difficult this year because normally we have, like up to a few hundred people coming to pay for hiking on a specific day and pick a community to do it in. We had it here in Pouch Cove, I don't know how long, 5-6 years ago, when we opened the Cape St. Francis Trail.
Right.
Yeah, right. And the community provided soup and sandwiches and music, and we had about 300 people.
Nice.
But it was so funny because I had figured, okay, it takes people usually 4 hours to go up to Cape St. Francis and back on the dirt road 1 hour. Unfortunately, it was a rainy day, and everybody was going really fast, so the soup wasn't ready when they came back.
Yeah, it's a good motivator.
So you had to scramble, Okay, first you go to, the seniors had put a few things into the building so people could look at old pictures. First you look at the pictures, and then you come in there, and then you have the soup and the music and all that.
That's awesome. Warming it up.
Yeah, but the communities like to do it too, So
Love
we
that.
try to, these fundraisers usually happening in a community,
Yeah, so it is very reliant on the community itself.
Yeah, but that's also a good thing. I always thought that communities have to buy in, That's so important.
Yeah.
And you were saying something like the maintenance. Of course, the maintenance is going to be huge,
Yeah.
And we wanted to get a budget for that every year, guaranteed. One of the biggest surprises to me was that the moment people start hiking on a trail, more people start hiking, suddenly all these roots come up from the trees. I don't know if you noticed.
Yeah, I've seen lots of roots.
Within a year or two, suddenly, there were no roots before. It's just, they come up. And I remember of course, our favorite thing to do is to have stones. Stones don't deteriorate, right?
Yes.
But, of course, the wooden steps deteriorate, and
Yeah.
we try to get the best wood we could get in the beginning. I remember that, but even that deteriorates.
20 years, 25 years.
Oh yeah.
So
that's we always, it has to be kept up.
Yeah, I was in Blackhead the other day, and to see somebody must have taken a big crowbar or something to move those rocks to make a huge stairway.
They were amazing.
Yeah.
At one time, we had fishermen working for us. I thought that was so great. They were paid for 5 years, of course, not to fish, and I think when we first got money from the government, it sounded like a lot of money, but basically they were topping up the unemployment.
Right.
And they were such great people working for us. They really were. And they were enthusiastic, and they were carrying all these stones. And even in the worst weather, they wouldn't stop. And I had for a while, on weekends, basically officially we were not doing anything up here, but they had sort of run out of work, and it was still winter.
Yeah.
And they asked me, well, is there something you want them to do here? And said, no, the trail to Pouch Cove, we should try to improve it a little bit, because it's quite difficult to find.
Yeah.
And I actually got lost one time on that trail. So that sticks with you. I don't like to be lost. If you're lost up here and it's not a sunny day,
yes.
Where am I? Not a good feeling. Anyway, so I offered that they could stay here overnight.
Yeah.
And so some of the group would come here on the weekend, basically, stay here overnight, and then we would go out and work on that. And they were enthusiastic. They really loved to work there.
I love that.
And I remember one young woman, she was maybe 30 or something, but I had a dog. And when they came back from their work, she asked me, well, can I walk your dog? I said, sure, go ahead, So she would walk the dog for an hour afterwards. And I asked her, well, how come? I mean, you're outside all day and you're still walking with the dog. She said, she used to work in the fish plant. And all day long she would do the same movements. And what saved her was walking in the evening. So she still had that kind of feeling that she needs to walk in the evening.
Well, that's a good message for everybody sitting at a desk all day.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And I said, oh yeah, I mean, this makes sense,
Yes, which
I
is
mean, the fish plant was probably not the easiest job, just doing the same movements all the time,
Yeah, that's what the saying I heard one time is we're called homo erectus, not homo sit down all day long and type. You know what I mean? At a desk, right?
But it was another revelation that I had never thought of. This is, of course, it's a nice kind of
way of
contrast,
doing it. Well, do you want to go down to the water for a quick walk?
Yeah, we didn't touch on one area that I was also concerned with to begin with. It is the economic possibilities that the East Coast Trail is bringing to communities. And that was important to me in the beginning. I mean, I could see that. A lot of my friends were academics that liked to hike, and basically I was that too. But I had also done training and a bit of a career in business before, and I was concerned about the future here. Okay, so I saw economic possibility.
Yeah.
I brought over a woman from Germany who had managed to have farmers work together. She gave us a couple of talks. In north of Germany, everybody like here was for themselves, but she created hikes, or you could take a bicycle or a horse, or you could hike from farm to farm.
Yep.
And they called them hay hotels. You could sleep in the hay.
Right.
But they would give you breakfast and a shower.
Oh, that's nice.
And if they brought a horse, the horse would be fed.
Yep.
You know, often by bicycle. So it was a really good program, and it took on, became quite successful.
Yes.
So I kept saying, how can we do that here? You know, we don't have these farms here, but we sort of did that a little bit with my partners, and I had several different partners over the years.
Yeah.
But people that I can rely on, and we work very well together.
Yeah.
So let's say I have my guests for about hikers for 4 days, and then they go over to the next place, and so while they are hiking, we would transfer the luggage already.
Right.
And the next people would pick them up at the end of the hike.
Right.
It works like a charm.
Right.
Works really well.
Well, it's funny. You said, people at first thought you had to have the amusement park to draw people in, but I feel like the charm is in the outdoor communities and in the rural side of Newfoundland, because that's the unique side for people.
Yeah, and what we have, luckily, some different partners. Every experience is different. Every community is different.
Right.
So I'm more like, okay, yeah, I'm European, but I sort of fit in, and I make sure that they meet some people here in the area.
Yep.
And the next one is actually a grandmother, and she brings in her grandchildren at times, and so you have a real family feeling when you stay with her. And the grandchildren also help with the driving, and the last people now we have in Port Cove, they are a couple that is really quite fun. I mean, they do music, they do, and obviously everybody takes care of their hikers, but there's also the entertainment and the conversations that you have.
Yep. So, Elke, thank you so much for taking the time today to walk me through the history of the East Coast Trail and your beautiful property up here at Points East.
Yeah, it was fun talking to you. Thanks.
It was a real treat to spend the morning with Elke hearing about her love for hiking in the outdoors. It was also amazing to learn how her and a handful of others had the vision to see the opportunities for ecotourism here at home. Through their hard work and commitment, they've not only made Newfoundland a destination for hikers from around the world, but they've helped open our eyes to the beauty that surrounds us every day. If you're like me and you've been enjoying the trails this summer and want to contribute to their upkeep or volunteer your time, you can reach out to the East Coast Trail Association on their website at eastcoasttrail.com. Or if you or any of your future visitors are looking for a hiking trip you'll always remember, then reach out to Elke at Points East Guest House in Pouch Cove. You won't regret it. I'm your host, Dr. Mike Wall. Happy trails to you until we meet again next week for another episode of the Health and Wellness Show on your VOCM.